Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and so while we're on the topic of like horizontal investment and vertical investment of characters, I thought it's really nice to share with you guys Eidolons of characters that I think are really good and which are the ones that you might want to keep an eye out on future. I just highlighted like the key ones. If you guys have any other comments that I might have missed out, feel free to leave me in the comment below. Let's start off with like the most obvious one here that is likely going to come back on a rerun, and this is Akirion. I'll share with you my thoughts on like their light cones as well as we go along this video. First things first, Akirion is super strong at like E2. If you are thinking of pulling for a character's Eidolons, Akirion is probably one of the characters that changed the most with E2 versus E0. If you are looking for a comparison in terms of absolute damage numbers, we have one on the channel. I'll like put it up on the like one of the video cards, or you can check it out on the channel as well. E0 versus E2 versus E6 damage difference. E2 is strong. It helps remove the main downside of Akirion, and that is her restriction by nihility class. E1, not really worth it. People that go for E1 are really those that are planning to go for E2 in future. Otherwise, $200. I assume like it's $200 for one character if you like top up and pull and go to hard pity. $200 for this, not very worth it in any sense. Her light cone, some of you are wondering, light cone first, Eidolon first. I think E0, S0, natural progression. Like let's say you have base copy without anything. First priority, E0, S0, moving into E0, S1 Akirion. And after E0, S1, you either stop there or you go for like E2, S1. And that will be my recommendations for Akirion, this particular character. So next unit, let's talk about Robin first, shall we? I think Robin is going to be an interesting one to discuss as well, since she is coming up on the banner as of time of recording. Where's my Robin? So Robin, in terms of her Eidolons, the key one, a lot of people say like 1 and 2 are the most important. The one that are really interesting to me, like quite good value, is E1 for Robin. This gives you all type rest pen, which is insane amount. 24% rest pen is very, very high. Any member can use it. So this is very good. And it's while she's in concerto state, which you want her to be in like as much as point of time anyway. So this is a very strong one. Land of Smiles here. E2 is okay-ish. It helps her regen faster, but I don't think it's critical. The critical one is E1. This is very, very fantastic. In my opinion, for Robin. Some of you might be wondering, how about Robin's light cone? I don't have it on this account, so I have to like switch to the data bank here to give you additional information on this screen over here. Robin's light cone here, every time where an ally attacks, gain 1 stack of cantillation. Each stack increases whereas energy regen by 3, so total up to 15 times because of 5 stacks. Use out, removes cantillation, instead gains cadenza. So as you are trying to build up your out, you gain the energy regen. Once you use your out, you swap over to attack percentage, a massive amount of attack percentage, 48%, increasing all allies damage dealt by 24%. I think this is very, very strong as well. But for the reason that there are actually a lot of other light cones available, harmony light cones that are really, really solid choice to make. Akirion, on the other hand, is like she didn't really have too much alternative. But for Robin, you have so many good ones, so many good light cones available as well. Just to name a few, like Planetary Rendezvous, if you're running like physical characters. You can go with like other ones that are pretty decent as well. I guess Carve the Moon, Weave the Cloud is also decent too. The difference is you can probably find a pretty decent harmony light cone compared to nihility one for Akirion. So I would say E0, S0, natural progression if you want to progress is E1, S0, and E1, S1 and stop there. Like that will be my recommendation for Robin if you wanted to progress in terms of like vertical investment or not. Next one, since we are on the topic of Robin, I want to touch on, I'm only just touching on key ones. So some of these characters like, might be super, super good. They're Eidolons, but I just want to like mention important ones as well. And not like E6. So anything beyond E3 or E4, I would say is like quite unobtainable for like majority of the population. Jiao is another one. I think interesting for him is probably, he of course just passed. The one that is key for him is E2. Because without E2, he doesn't do too much damage at all. With E2, he actually has quite a massive amount of fire DOT bonus that he can do. He starts to actually become a damage dealer rather than just a support himself. Here, of course, you deal increased damage. E1 is also very solid. In fact, Jiao is a character that E1, E2 is very good, which is going to be very expensive because you need like E2 Akirion, E2 Jiao in order to like see the maximum pop off. But if you're playing with Akirion, you actually don't really need E2. You can just go with like E1 Jiao maximum if you're running him with Akirion teams. E2 if you're planning to play him like Kafka teams, Black Swan teams in future also for like DOT, then you can consider going E2. So E2 helps his longevity, E1 helps him in his niche and what he does best to help Akirion do a lot of damage. That's my opinion. Do you really need his light cone? I would say this is a character that doesn't really require his light cone. If you are looking for damage increase, you have a lot of gear that gives you damage increase in the nihility section, like Resolution Shines and Pearls of Sweat, which is what I'm using. If you're looking for effect hit rate, you have Eyes of Prey. For those of you who are luckier, came from the event, you also have before the tutorial mission starts. So many options available already for a character like Jiao Qiu. So that aside, let's look at the next character here, which is going to be Ruanmei. I think Ruanmei is an excellent character to talk about. Some people are wondering like her signature first or her Eidolons. The best Eidolon for Ruanmei is very similar to Robin. Her E1 is the strongest. While Robin gave you all type respan, this gives you 20% defense ignore, which is also very, very solid. She generally has her uptime up. Her uptime I don't think is 100%. I think it only gets 100% after some time. Yeah, she only gets 100% at E6. So Robin's is very, very good uptime. But Ruanmei is not always the best uptime for E1, but it's still pretty solid, a 20% defense ignore. E2, not as important. It's a good damage buff, but it isn't worth the $200 in my opinion. So E1 Robin good, E1 Ruanmei good, but I think I would rank like E1 Robin slightly better than Ruanmei E1 if you were like trying to decide the two which one you want to go for. And always getting E0 Robin and E0 Ruanmei, both of them is better than having E1 of one and not having the other, in my opinion, because they are both very solid supports to play as well. So Light Cone, her signature Light Cone here gives her break effect, 60%. This is very massive. When the wearer uses their out, increases all damage by 24%. I think this is also solid, but for most people, you actually have pretty good alternatives for for Ruanmei already. You can use pretty decent ones like Memories of the Past if you have it at S5. This is of course a little bit expensive, but you can slowly progress and get this. If you have it at like one copy, you get some break effect, you get a good amount of energy regen, which is both what she requires because she wants the uptime and she wants the break effect stat to actually do damage. So progression wise, I think my recommendation will be something like E0, S0 Ruanmei, and if you have S5 Memory of the Past, you don't need her signature Light Cone, it's like not super critical, then you can go for E1, S0, this Memories of the Past one over here, if you have it at S5. If you do not have S5, I think it makes a lot of sense to go for a signature Light Cone, E0, S1, and then E1, S1, and stop there. I think it's good enough, in my opinion. So that will be Ruanmei, which is also a really, really solid character to talk about. Another one, let's go back with a little bit of older state. I think another one that a lot of people were talking about in the older days, and let's just make it quick because they are not on the banner now. Imbibitor Lunae E2, probably one of the most solid ones because he gains an extra stack of his stacks. If you are an Imbibitor Lunae player, this is one that you want to work towards as well. I think this is really strong. E1 here is okay-ish, is nice to have, but really the critical one for Imbibitor Lunae is probably E2. And that's a trend that we are seeing with a lot of DPSs in Honkai Star Rail. They always make like E2 super tasty and that people want to go for. I think Jade is also interesting for E1. Follow attack increases by 32%. After Debt Collector attacks a number of targets, it gains more stacks. This is also pretty nice to see. This one I don't think is super important. So E1 Jade, quite interesting to think about. But not like super critical, but it's just something that is interesting. I think Ting Liu is another character that's E2 is also really strong. Or was it her E1? One of them that's super good. So crit damage increases one target. Additionally, I don't think it's as good as Imbibitor Lunae, but this is back in the day, a lot of people were talking about this as well. I personally didn't go for it. I personally prefer going for the signature instead. I think like E0, S1 is good enough for Ting Liu. And at the same time, let's talk about Topaz and Nambi, who's currently on the patch, which I think is interesting. It's probably this E1 over here. This is, I think, really, really strong for Topaz E1. When enemies afflicted by Proof of Debt receive follow-up attacks, they enter a debtor state. This can stack up to 2 times, meaning that you do 50% crit damage taken by the enemies. 50% crit damage, very, very insane amounts of damage for a single target. This helps her become, she will just shred with this additional 50% damage that she inflicts on an enemy with this debtor state. So E1, Topaz and Nambi, very, very powerful. I think it's super strong. This one is okay, E2 is so-so, but E1 is really the strong one for Topaz and Nambi. In terms of light cones for Topaz and Nambi, I don't think it's super critical for her. Personally, I didn't pick it up as well, but let's take a look at the hunt section over here. We have Worrisome Blissful, increases crit rate of 18%, increased damage of follow attack by 30%, her own damage, which she's more of a support player at this point, especially if you're playing with Fei Xiao. After the wearer uses follow attacks, inflict the target with a tame state, stacking up to 2 times. Each time increasing the damage by 12%. This is the part that is interesting. So you get like 24% damage increase. At the same time, she doesn't mind the 5-star stats, additional damage that she does too. So S1 is quite useful, but if I were to rank like which one's priority, there's a lot of free good ones already for Hunt, and we probably know that by now. My recommendation for most people, like if you're pulling for a character like Topaz and thinking of going for more vertical investment, is E1 S0 makes more sense than E0 S1, just because of the massive amount that you get from Proof of Debt. That 50% is just like ridiculously high. I think that's really, really solid as well. Another one I want to talk about is Kafka's Eidolons. I think since she's on banner, it's going to be nice to talk about. Kafka is good all the way up to E2 in my opinion. This one increases, it just gives a debuff where they take more DOT damage, helping her anchor her place as a strong support for DOT teams in the long run. And Fortissimo, while Kafka is on fail, DOT of all allies increased by 25%, making her like a super strong DOT buffer as well. So E2 Kafka, if you're a DOT lover, is worth it. Her signature is also very unique, very, very strong. This is the part in her kit that actually puts the unique shock status. Otherwise, Kafka is just a plain vanilla normal shock unit that overlaps with like some other shock characters. So this light cone itself is very unique, very special. It gives you a lot of speed, gives you a lot of damage, that you can put on a lot of characters. Like even Black Swan can use this and find it really good. So my recommendation for most people will go for E0 S0 as base, and then if you wanted to progress, go E0 S1. Kafka, because the light cone is so versatile, can swap into other characters in future, and then go E1 S1, E2 S1, depending on how much you really love this particular unit. That would be my recommendation. Support Eidolons, some of you are wondering, like for example, E1, Fucc and stuff. They are nice to have this additional 30% crit damage, but I don't think it's like super critical. For support characters, I don't think E0 S0 is like good enough. You can save your money for like other things. Generally, they are really, really very functional at E0 S0. The only reason why I got Fuccen's light cone is I just wanted the 10k HP on my Fucc. That's just an obsession with numbers here, but don't be like me, you don't really need it. And probably that's the critical ones. If I missed out any and you guys want to add on, feel free to leave a comment below as well. And my last recommendation is never go for E6 in this game. It's not worth it. I benched my Zealer $2,000. It's definitely not a good idea. Anyways, I'm just joking, but thank you guys so much for watching again. Check out these two other videos which you might find helpful as well. Leave a comment, subscribe for more such future content. See you next video.